Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. The time is now 3 p.m. We're going to call this council work session to order. The first item on our agenda is response to May 7th visitor comments. We had a couple items on there. The first one, and just a reminder, these clearing confusion and setting the facts straight, they can be found on our city council website. They're on the right-hand side, so you can go and look at any of these. Number one is rules on posting no loitering signs, which is a no loitering sign may be posted on private property as long as it is not erected in vision clearance area and does not exceed 8 square feet in an area at 6 feet in height. This type of sign is exempt from sign permit rules SHMC 17-88-040 10. So that can be found. Also, tourism fund to date. The St. Helens Tourism Fund income statement as of March 31st, 2025 is attached to these setting the facts straight. It is accompanied by a summary report from the finance director, Gloria Butch, and profit loss summary statements for the Spirit of Halloween Town 2024 and Holiday in the Plaza 2024. I'm not going to go through and read all of those, but they are located there. So if somebody would like to find them, it's an easier way to locate them. And with that, we will open this up for public comment. So now's the time for visitor comments. The visitor comment period is an essential part of local government meetings. Each person has 3 minutes to speak. Please keep it to 3 minutes or less. The city council will take input into consideration. However, in observant to Oregon open meeting laws, this isn't the time for dialogue, but rather a time for us to listen to you. Our city administrator and city recorder are taking notes of action if needed and will follow up with you. Please make sure that you provided the contact information for yourself in the sign-in sheet in the back of the room. If they need to get a hold of you, they will know how to do so. When you come up, please state your name for the record, and we'll take our first public comment. And again, 3 minutes or less, please.
My name is Ron Trelmowitz. Trust matters. The public needs to believe they are receiving the truth. There is a cost to the city avoiding truth. The cost effect is voter disapproval. John Waltz, the city administration, needs to come clean with the 2 million gallon reservoir rehabilitation failure. The city has been good at secrecy and silence. That keeps the public from the true cause and responsibility of the 2 million gallon rehabilitation failure. The newspapers have facilitated the city's ability of withholding the nature of the rehabilitation failure. Sue Nelson, the city engineering director, required the repair work to begin October 1st, 2016 through 2017 during the Oregon wet season. The repair work failed, and Sue Nelson believes it was a workmanship issue. The contractor did not apply the product correctly, and the product tested perfectly. May 24th, 2017 is how it was installed, according to Sue Nelson. Sue Nelson omits the December 20th, 2017 Bear investigation and consulting notes that no oversight was a lack of oversight during the inspection during the geotextile mat and epoxy application. Tim Underwood was the construction inspector. Sharon says that she's searching the files, could not find Tim Underwood inspector certificate between 2016 and 2020. April 8th, 2021, Tim Underwood received a certified general construction inspector certificate. The failure of the construction oversight would have been Tim Underwood's responsibility. This amounts to a failure of compliance during the liner's application. I have remarked that for years that the city's actions have been neglect, ignore, and poor diligence. I would like to see the files that pertain to the March 1st, 2022 mediation and those in attendance. The city said it's a closed case. The attorney, Dave Bowers, does not want to respond to a mediation information request. The April 22 settlement agreement produced evidence which determined that Western Partitions, Carboline, and Kennedy Jinks has no liability for the 2 million gallon reservoir failure. John Walsh omitted the details of no liability from the public. This requires an explanation, not client privilege. The Walker report was used for mediation, contains the evidence of the city's mishandling of the W-49 contract. The cause and effect of the hidden truth is distrust. The mediation results are a notification that the city was responsible party for the 2 million gallon reservoir, derelict reservoir. Thank you.
Brady Freeheim, mistakes are part of life. They happen. How you handle them is about character. Your finance director lied at your last meeting when she said this is the first year that any income came from tourism. You all know that's a lie. I know it's a lie. No one corrected it. Either that or she stole the money herself. Maybe there should be an FBI investigation. The other lie is about that Treadway made money. I see the income statement that you show. It shows the loan to Treadway, never shows it being repaid. If you deduct the loan that you gave them out of that, they actually didn't make any money at all. Another mistake that you've made is the waterfront, especially the railing. Who likes it? Nobody. How is that mistake going to get corrected? Not to mention the construction issues. Another mistake that you've made is the Main Street and the money that you've agreed to give them. And of course, the conflict that Russ Hubbard has, that he's never declared the money that he's gotten from a grant from Main Street, never publicly has mentioned it. So those were about character, admitting those conflicts and bringing them up. Spending $115,000 on Christmas for an event that used to be literally nothing is also a mistake. That's a huge amount of money. Assigning Treadway, who really has not given the city any money. I see no record, contrary to Gloria saying that you got money from Treadway at all. Treadway hasn't given you a dime. Finally, I want to talk about lies. Your mayor has said that your chief of police has lied. You need to resolve that issue. That's a huge mistake, and that's about character. Knowing Massey, she probably put it in writing. You don't have to prove everything, but she probably put in writing the fact that she wanted John to fire Hogue. He's sitting right there. You can go in executive session and ask him. If you find out, in fact, that she emailed or told him to fire Chief Hogue, then we know who's lying. And it's your obligation then to come back out, and you need to censure your mayor so that we know who was lying. It is not sustainable for us to just pretend like it didn't happen. We cannot have a situation where the mayor has called your chief of police a liar and just pretend that that's going to go away. It's not. It needs to get resolved, and you have the power to resolve it. So you should. We don't need to wait for the lawsuit. We don't need to do that. If you prove that he was asked to fire John, you can take action, and you should.
Comment?
Steve Topaz still attacking or interested in the accuracy of the record. Last council meeting, I brought up the fact that John Walsh had made a presentation to Portland Harbor about using our waste pond as a toxic waste dump. In the report, it says he allegedly made a report. Now, I made a statement. The other part of the statement was I had not been able to find the information that he had been authorized to do that by the council. Now, going to public information on the web, I found out, and I forgot the exact date when I talked last time, there was November of 2014. He made a presentation. Susan Kahn was there. Another one of our members. So the fact that this statement was made and is recorded electronically, I looked up some other leads, and it said, "Hey, this is the lead, you punch on that and hopefully it takes you to where it goes, and this file is no longer available." We have a problem with the accuracy of our recording. I also found out at the same time in the public meeting, the community did not want any apartments on the waterfront. We have not had any meetings about the toxic waste for 11 years with the public. So that's basically some of the accuracy on there. The other thing that came up, and I just read an abstract on a book about how you become a tyranny. And one of the examples is Hitler and the business of Germany. They used others. Point is that you take away freedoms a little bit at a time, make meetings unavailable a little bit of a time, like from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock to 5 minutes of talking to 3 minutes of talking to bad records. And also you need in a tyranny people who are good and people who are bad, because in Nazi Germany, the Jews were bad, the Nordics were good. In St. Helens, the good people are, I was born and raised here. And if you're not one of those people, you're bad. You'll notice that, as happened last week, the locals got more than 3 minutes. When the 3-minute mark came up last week, the bell went off and Topaz was cited. We have very much a problem of some people have privileges in this town and some people don't. We had Kathy Payne last time at the finance meeting say she has a very good crew working for her. She's a citizen of St. Helens, an employee, and these people need a raise. Kathy did exactly the right thing. She stuck up for her people. She was a leader. When the police chief suggested to his people how they should stick up for themselves, it was rated against him. We have a person who's lived here forever. We have an outsider. I want to keep pointing out that we seem to have these little points that St. Helens seems to have cultivated that are pushing us backwards. Thank you.
Anybody else with a public comment? Do you have anybody online, Kathy? Yes. It's Adam. Adam, can you hear?
Hello. Yep, Adam St. Pierre here. I just wanted to make a statement. I finally got around to watching the budget committee meeting. It looks like a couple of the cast of characters are really trying to go after the police budget. I just want to go back and remember about a year ago, we put our police chief on leave. We had just lost 24-hour coverage. I had a conversation, shortly thereafter with our acting police chief and said, hey, how did we get here? Who made the schedule for the 24/7 being gone? He admitted to me it was his schedule. He changed it. So I asked him, how did you get the guys to come back to, fill these schedules? Is it overtime? What caused that? And he said, I talked to the guys. I made them a promise it would be temporary. I'm ad-libbing here. I think I wrote an email and you guys all got a copy of it at about that time. I asked about, morale of the crew. I asked about, backfilling positions, copious amounts of overtime, making sure that their training schedule wasn't affected based on, these additional hours that were going to be asked to be worked on top of whatever it was that caused this schedule change at the time. And he assured me that the guys were willing to work with them on a temporary basis. What I heard at the budget committee was this temporary basis was supposed to become permanent at this point due to budget cuts or whatever it was and not backfilling some positions that are open. I think we need to remember here how we got to this situation back in 2016, 17, when it was, multiple previous police chiefs said, we're going to have a problem filling these positions. It's a 2-year process to get anybody into any of these positions. I think you as a council need to really take that into consideration and not pull the funding for those jobs. If we get, a new police chief or the current police chief takes over and the instability of the department is over and done with, we have an opportunity to do some great recruiting and get some new officers in here. We need to make sure we have the budget there for them to minimize the overtime for the existing officers. Rumor has it that the existing officers are working anywhere between 15 and 30 hours of overtime a week per person. That costs money. That'll offset a lot of the, expense of having new officers. And one way to also get those officers to come and lateral transfers or whatever is to make sure you have a new police station. I know that's on the agenda. Get it built wherever it is, however it is, so we don't have to pay any more arbitrage fees. Let's get moving on it. So aside from that, I think that there needs to be a cut all the way across the budget. I don't think, I don't want to see the water bill go up, but if that's what it is, that's what it is. But we got to make sure we continue to move forward, especially with our police department, because we're at a very difficult time. We're going to end up losing officers from burnout or losing our 24-hour coverage.
Adam, your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other people online? All right. Okay, so we will move into discussion topics. Quarterly reports from city departments and divisions. First thing I want to ask is, well, one, thank you for such a comprehensive report. Fantastic. The only question, going through this for me was, how was the report? Is there anything we need to modify, council need to do? We're going through this as a learning process, trying to streamline, and how are you feeling about it?
Thank you, Mayor. I think you guys have been really generous and flexible in the way we approach these reports. So we have made some suggestions from the leadership team, and you guys have taken that to heart and you have implemented those changes. And I've seen the care coming from Council members and yourself, where you actually listened and you wanted to make it easy for us. So based on today's new schedule that we have moved to, I think those are fantastic. They work very well for almost everyone that I'm aware of. And the new format is also fantastic, from, moving from presentations to this leaned up and, high level, and having us available for answering questions. So yeah, thank you very much.
We're still looking at the very deadline of June 30th, right?
I promised Council President June 30th. However, we're actually gonna be done earlier. So that's.
I have a problem pulling the schedule in.
Yes. We will fill you in with an official, report, but we have a couple minor surprises we're working through, and we'll get there very soon.
All right. Does anybody have any comments on the report?
Good.
Everybody happy with how they're going as well?
Quick comment, Mohammed, since we've had some concerns from citizens, could you mention briefly, you mentioned in your report about a punch list. Can you mention some of the items that are being?
Yeah. So we've actually done several walks. So in typical any project that we have in any size, we have something called a punch list that at the end of the project, before we finalize the contract and sign off on those, we have to walk the entire project site, making sure everything installed to specs, everything looks good. So some of the comments that I've seen came through the project. I think Brady, you mentioned something about the cracking in the caps, some concretes. So all that has been documented and been taken in consideration, and it has to be fixed prior for us to sign off on those, because those are not meeting the city standards. Throughout the process, again, concrete cracking is really a natural process that happens anytime you install concrete. Nowhere in the world you can put this much of concrete and you're not gonna have cracking because of weathering, because of, just the natural hydration process that takes 30 days. So if you probably learned that sometimes we have to have closure for 7 days, 30 days, concrete curing, depending on capacity, whether it's a minimum 3,000 PSI for a sidewalk, it takes 4 days. If you want to put a large intersection, you need 30 days, and so forth. So with that said, all that has been documented. We are solving those now as we go before we sign off on the project. And some of the other larger issues like where the caps that you mentioned several times, this is a design issue that we're addressing with the design firm due to grout and not having space for concrete to expand. Any vibration, minor vibration in the pole tips it, it caused the cracking for that massive cap you see. So we are gonna replace all those with the brand new ones. And this is all gonna be addressed. And last but not least, I want to address the elephant in the room, right? We talked about a surprise closure for 3 days. I know that was not a pleasant news, and I can tell you it was not pleasant for us from the city as well. We were a little surprised. However, so the reason for that is in the Calus intersection. The paver bands you see on the floor, those were the first to be installed, and they were installed incorrectly per specs. So there is a sealant that goes underneath with a layer of sand that was not properly put. What that caused, any traffic that goes on those caused some cracking. So again, we can say it's okay, it's coupled, but in our standards, we're not gonna allow that. We want this to be perfectly done. And what that's gonna take 3 days of closure. Fortunately, it's only 3 days guaranteed. However, it's still an uncomfortable thing. So, you know, one of the issue that was brought up by a couple business owners, the closure of outlets. So we had an important meeting yesterday, and we talked in depth about what are the solutions and ways we can keep the traffic flow going. And we found actually a pretty good solution that's gonna prevent all the headache that some folks were worried about, especially from the physical therapy. We will open a temporary road again through Plymouth, and we will have delineations, and we'll get through that. So all, disabilities, services and whatnot can be still addressed without. We will reach out with official notes, so this was still behind the scene. We send a big report to Mr. Walsh. He will share with the council, and we will also follow up with all the businesses to let them know what's the plan. Last but not least, I want to really thank Salisbury here. She's been one of the troopers in this entire project. We had so much work around her house, and I can tell you, I don't think I've ever heard a complaint from you. And I checked with my team, you've been really patient. And thank you for being patient. There's a lot of work that happens around that area, and really, if I was her personally, I will be loud and complaining, but she's really been very supportive for the project, the city, and we thank you for being patient.
I have a really good therapist.
Introduce me.
I have one with cancer and headphones. I have one more question as it relates to the project. So one of the concerns that I've most recently heard about is the turn lane at the end of this parking lot that allows you to come into the parking for the courthouse. The parking got changed from parallel parking to parking like this. So there's less space there for that turn lane and cars to drive by. I figured this out when I was turning in my ballot, which I'm sure a lot of people figured it out that way as well. Is there any way we can look at that and make sure that specs are correct? And maybe the turn lane doesn't need to be there, because if someone's going straight, they can still stop and turn left with the blinker. So
Can you please tell me, Council President, are we talking here?
it's on the other side of the courthouse parking. So the intersection, I forget the name of that intersection right there, but
Where the CrossFit is?
yes, yes.
Okay.
At the corner, that corner.
Yeah, we'll look at it. So you're saying the parking spot is tight?
Yeah, so that we changed the parking so that it's not parallel like this anymore. It's this direction. So there's not enough space basically for if that is full of cars and someone's in the turning lane, there's not enough space for a car to go straight like you're going into the court. Or
Yeah.
you're confusing. I'm just saying, like, realistically, you don't need a turn lane there, because someone could, if they needed to turn, they could just stop, put their blinker on and then turn left, but it could be straight. I don't know. It's just
Absolutely.
a thought. Something I've been reading out there, and it made sense to myself when I went to turn my ballot in.
I agree with that.
Well, I see a lot of consensus. I'm actually not aware of that. So thank you.
Oh, it's out there, yeah.
I will talk to my team about it. I know we had one of the, the issues where on the intersections came out, some of the parking spots kind of a little tight for a turn coming in. So we're looking at making at least the first or second spot compact cars where you have a large truck, right? It's kind of in the road. But this one definitely will address, and I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
The only thing I wanted to add was just a compliment actually, because both John and yourself being very prompt on responding to a lot of the business owners' concerns. The feedback that's come back to me, and I believe Counselor Hubbard too, is just that is, I feel, a vast improvement on just the turnaround time. And so that is very much appreciated anytime somebody has one of the concerns, especially our business staff here. So thank you very much for getting right on that. And it mitigates a lot of frustration and confusion and stuff if we put that out there. So
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's been a journey. We really went through a lot, but I'm very glad we're at the finish line, and I think the city will really prosper, businesses will prosper as soon as we finish, and this summer is gonna be special.
the last thing is those that are familiar with construction are vastly aware of punch lists, the dreaded punch list items. That is a common practice on every single construction project there is. So it's not an anomaly here in St. Helens based on vendors or craftsmanship or anything of the sort or specs. They just happen. So
Thank you.
you don't know anything about that, right?
No.
No.
I got a question on operations,
Yes.
call outs. I see a lot of high and low level alarms going off on the different systems. Is that normal?
It's very normal. So we have our water filtrations, we have something called SCADA system. A lot of those systems are very sensitive, a lot of time to basic levels changes in the water, right? Up, down, it could trigger an alarm, what you call a false alarm. So yeah, these are normal for the most part. We've had some upgrades between our wastewater treatment and our water filtration. And so we're trying to work on making sure that the sensitivity level, right, can be adjusted so this doesn't happen. We also implemented, Council Hubbard, what you call a VPN access to our network through, a laptop. So a lot of time those alarm that comes in, we don't have to actually physically drive there anymore. We can check it if a matter of a system online and adjust any levels that we need to before having to come here for a emergency.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Then you good?
I'm good.
All right, we're gonna move to item number 3, Main Street Alliance Annual Report to Council.
I'm gonna stand if you guys don't mind. I sometimes think better if I'm on my feet. Council, Madam Mayor, John, thank you for having us and allowing us to present this partner report. I'm here as the board president for St. Helens Main Street Alliance. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We are entirely volunteer run at this point. And we'll be talking a little bit about that as we go on. So who are we? Our mission is purely about supporting the economic vitality of our historic commercial districts in St. Helens. That's not just the downtown Riverfront district, that's also the uptown, the Holton district along Columbia Boulevard. We were known in the past as St. Helens Economic Development Corporation, or SHEDCO, and we were rebranded in 2021 to become the St. Helens Main Street Alliance and realign ourselves again with this bigger picture of what a Main Street organization is. Next slide. So this is the district. It's huge. And there are about 130 other Main Street organizations in the state of Oregon. Please understand that in terms of sheer blocks and lots, St. Helens has a very large Main Street, just in terms of area. But it makes sense about, we're really kind of these two towns that became one. We really have two historic areas that make sense to support. Rather than supporting just the downtown, it really is important that we put some love and attention into uptown as well. Go ahead and next slide. The thing about Main Street is that we're not doing this in a vacuum. We're doing this from a methodology and a framework that is time tested and proven across the country. it really, my big picture overview is that there are four main points that we try to hit as a Main Street organization: about economic development, about promotion, which would be events, about organization, about, what's my fourth one, you guys? Design, thank you, art and design. And the idea is that when you're a Main Street organization, you don't just pick one thing, like say, doing a Halloween town or doing a 13 nights and just do that. The idea is that you're kind of constantly working on the canvas of your community and finding ways to engage all of these things because they all feed together. We're an organization that's not just, say, a membership organization for businesses like, say, a chamber. We're really supposed to be the kind of organization that is the meeting place for business owners, for property owners, for citizens, for residents who work in the district, maybe they live outside the district, and even for visitors who are volunteering. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So again, we exist within a framework of Oregon Main Street. We are one of many across the state. We're at really, there's another tier that's kind of below the affiliated Main Street tier. The highest, the goal would be to become an accredited Main Street. And you can see, if you can see the little print there, those are programs that have been in existence for quite a while. Some of them are larger populations, but some of them are not. Designated Main Street is the next level down from that, and affiliated Main Street is where we're at now. Our goal would be to move up to the designated Main Street level, but there are some things that we need to do to get there. And some of that is about having a comprehensive data set behind us, also having some good practices, also having a full-time program director here in town doing the work to move this forward. But for right now, we're in very good company. There's one tier below this, which is called Exploring Main Street. I believe that Scappoose has now entered that tier. And so that is another realm where folks can kind of start to figure out how Main Street works as they're organizing their Main Street organization. The idea is that within this big framework, we're all taking the ideas of Main Street, the methodologies, some of the brainstorms, and we're applying it to our very unique local set of circumstances. Nobody else has quite the mix of uptown and downtown that we do. Nobody else has quite the waterfront on the Columbia River. Nobody else has a Halloween town tradition. So we've got to figure out how to make St. Helens Main Street Alliance work here by using some of the tools that we can glean from Oregon Main Street and Main Street America. And I think what I'd like to do is what I really like to do is be able to engage in conversation with you. So I'm going to go through a bunch of these slides very quickly, and then let's come back and let's answer your questions. That's where I think the bulk of our time should be. The biggest thing is to know that Oregon Main Street does, for us to remain a Main Street organization, they do have requirements on us. This year, it is a couple of trainings. Just came back from a training in Astoria. One of my board members went with me, and we took a couple days, and the focus on that training with all of the other Oregon Main Streets was about succession planning within our organization, both at the board level and in terms of staff. And then also a really deep dive into what is restoration, revitalization work on old downtowns, because we were in Astoria and we got some really beautiful ideas. I do want to mention that one of the things about Oregon Main Street, we have this term that we all use, which is about R&D. R&D in the Main Street world is rip off and duplicate. And it is absolutely, there is a shared ethos of, there's a listserv and a weekly Zoom meeting, and it is who has tackled this problem before in their community, who's dealing with parking, who's dealing with vacant, unused lots, who's dealing with, and we share a lot of information and we try to figure it out. Who has been really successful at winning Oregon Main Street grants? Sometimes we get to raise our hands too. Let's see, go ahead, next slide. So our economic impact to you here. And this is one of the things that we really want to make sure that you guys understand, that at its core, our partnership with City Council and the City of St. Helens is a large part of why we're here. It is the work we're here to do. We've been very successful at winning Oregon Main Street grants with this organization. When I came on board in late 21, we were wrapping up the work with the Columbia Theater. They had a $200,000 grant that we were wrapping up. We, at the very beginning of 2022, we applied for a grant for the Klondike. We've just wrapped that one up. The Klondike grant was about replacing their roof and about doing some much needed foundational work that is going to let them stabilize that building for the long term and activate the second and third floors. The Holton Hollow project is Russ Hubbard and Mary Hubbard's project. It's the new construction that's across the street from Red Apple. It is unusual for an Oregon Main Street grant to be awarded to a new construction piece. The scope of that grant was purely about the stonework and the artistic elements that were added on to that building, in large part with the idea of, again, how can we do something that creates sense of place and ties into what makes our city special? That basalt found stonework is, I think, part of that and echoes a lot of things. So it's a beautiful project. We'll talk about how that got selected if you have questions about that. The Crooked Creek project is the old dockside building. And again, we got a $200,000 grant for that. Money for that went into some much needed work with roof, with the back wall, with the kitchen, with the foundation. There with an HVAC system. So again, that is just wrapping up as well. So yeah, just go ahead and fly right through. I mean, you can see some of what Crooked Creek was dealing with. The next one is the Holton Hollow. Again, that stonework and the beautiful trellis. So you can see Holcomb's finger pointing to where the foundation work was going to be. There will be a porch there, and we've got another grant that Main Street applied for and that we're in process of completing. That is the foundational work and the ordering of an elevator for the second and third floors. So that will be happening here soon. We did put in an application for another Main Street grant. Main Street grants open up every 2 years. So we have submitted a new one. We do not yet have word on that. They're going to be deciding sometime here in the next couple of weeks whether or not we get awarded. And that's the thing with these grants. City of St. Helens cannot apply for a Oregon Main Street revitalization grant. It can only be a Main Street organization that applies for one of these grants. So you have to have a Main Street to apply for a grant. We make a decision locally about which project or projects we're going to support. We ask for applications from within the community. And then we have a team of citizens. And in fact, we usually would borrow Jenny Demshow to come sit in on that panel. And we rank all of our local applications. We score them, we rank them, then we have a discussion. Which one do we want to pick to put forward? So we've done it this way since we had the Klondike grant. And then we get to work. And it takes about 5 weeks of really solid work. The resulting application and document that we send off to Oregon Main Street is about the equivalent of 60 to 75 pages. There's history, there's economic analysis, there's letters of support from other agencies. And then we wait, like we're waiting right now. We wait sometimes a couple of months to see if we've been awarded something. This year, And every year it's a little bit different, but I think for you to know, council, that we decide locally maybe to put forward one or two, but we don't decide whether or not we get the money. Okay, that decision is made by Oregon Main Street and their team. So once they decide they award, if we receive one this year, that will be amazing. There is a lot more competition this year. I think that's why it's taking so long. But regardless, if we receive one, that's great. This year, the funds have gone up. Instead of $200,000, it's up to $400,000. It will be an amazing boon for our private property owner, if indeed if we land that. And so if we do, you'll be the first to know after my board knows. So let's see. Okay. Perfect. I think this is the other kind of maybe obvious point, is that we can do things that the city sometimes can't do. We can kind of bridge some gaps, we can collect data, we can be another voice at the table. We can also sometimes solve problems in a way that maybe city staff can't. Go ahead. So you may remember that we were with you last year. I'm actually surprised he's not here right now. When you decided to declare last spring, that the Flying Eagle canoe should be surplus property. We're very grateful that you did so and gave it to Main Street with the full and clear knowledge that we were going to turn around. I sold it to Willow Bill for $1. So with board's permission, it's all very straightforward. Willow Bill is getting ready here in the next 2 to 3 weeks to embark on his cross-country journey with the canoe. He's going to be putting it in at the headwaters of the Mississippi in Minnesota. He thinks about around 4th of July and heading down. And again, things that we can help with and problem solve that maybe don't cost the city liability, et cetera. Next slide. And again, a place for us to help in terms of gathering volunteers. Go ahead. I know I'm right up against my time, so we're trying to find ways to collaborate. We are really delighted about the relationship we've been building with Treadway. We find them very responsive. We find them we've been very happy to try and connect them up with other community partners. We did work with the CET and Keep It Local on the business retention survey that happened earlier in the year. And then from some of our own projects, our promotions committee developed the I Dig St. Helens idea. And again, maybe not as, maybe it wasn't a huge splash, but just that idea about let's change the narrative about the construction project downtown. This is a really limited point in time. And yes, the last 2 years have been very hard on businesses and very hard to find parking and very hard to get into the community. However, now as we're starting to see what the change is, this is this beautiful little point in time where we got to be here while it was changing. So the I Dig St. Helens was about that. Our North of West Music Fest, we very quietly put it together last fall. We're going to be doing it again in September, growing it a little bit more. The idea is a little bit like, say, thank you, South by Southwest. This is why you have your team back here to back you up when your brain doesn't work. The South by Southwest event in Austin, venue-specific music, wristband movement around the city. So on September 20th, we're going to do that, expanding it out. We're still looking to lock in all our venues. So, and we're hoping to have some up in Holton as well. Also, just fresh off the bus, we're going to be partnering with another group that same day who are going to be, the Columbia Arts Guild is going to do a plein air painting event that morning. And so we're definitely going to be doing a whole lot of collaboration with them about that. we can go ahead and move on. So. And go ahead. And so, yes. We don't need to talk about it. Let's move on. I didn't want to get to the question part. So north of west. Go ahead to the next one. Cool pictures. I cannot take credit for this slide deck, you guys. It's absolutely fantastically made by one of my board members, by Jen. And so we have been fairly quiet. We like to keep our heads down and get our work done. But we hope that we'll be seeing more of you and be a little more visible. Where it says membership structure, think of it more like sponsorship structure. How can we get some more financial contributors to support the work we're doing? We absolutely have got to go back to the drawing board and come up with a way to get some in-house staff support. So we're having conversations about that. Let me think. I've kind of gotten ahead of myself here. I'm so good at that. I think the thing that I'd like to leave you with, maybe before we have questions, is that the whole reason why we're here as a partner is because there is a memorandum of understanding between St. Helens and the city. I think the last time that was really looked at or updated was in 2022. I think it's probably time for us to look at it again. The basic outline of that agreement in terms of what the city was providing to Main Street was $30,000 for executive director salary, was to provide support for office space, technology, administrative kinds of equipment, to have a council liaison present at our meetings, which things have been chaotic, and Rick used to be the person who would come to our meetings. So that's probably a conversation to have about who can we tempt to come to our meetings and connect with us. Provide funding in the city budget for Main Street related programs. So that was one of the bullet points in the MOU. Provide time and funding for the executive director and the council liaison to attend Oregon Main Street workshops and conferences. So those were kinds of the 5 main things that might have a financial budgetary impact. I don't think it has ever been more than $36,000 a year. And to be honest, we have not in your fiscal year, because we have slightly different fiscal years, we have not asked for any funding this year. We were very aware this time last year of everything that was going on. We also have not had an executive director for now a year and a quarter. We had one for a year. We had an interim for a while, and the board made the decision when all of the budget issues were going on and all of the questions about event production were happening last spring, that we would hold tight. So here we are a year later. And I think it's probably time for us to start that conversation with everything we know now. We feel like we, as a group of volunteers, have done an incredible job presenting you with some property improvements in your district that are real and that are meaningful. And that we are continuing to do the work we're meant to do. So what questions can I answer?
Kevin? I always have questions, so I'll just, do you have a total of the amount of money that you have brought in for grants and totality?
I should have that. So I think we're up to, if you count, where's my number? If you count the fact that of the 400, 800, $900,000 worth of for sure grants. There's also matching funds that those private property owners put up to the tune of an additional $263,000. That's what we've counted. That's what we've documented. There has also been more. I mean, clearly the Crooked Creek project alone and the Klondike project alone, there's significant other dollars that are being spent that are outside the scope of the grant work, right? But yeah, I would say that we are north of $1 million at this point since 2022.
Do we know, do you have a ballpark? I could go back and look, I'm sure, but how much total that the city has provided in budget funding for you?
It's gotta be at this point less than $100,000. So I mean, we can look, I think that it's been 3 or 4 years, but yeah, that would be an easy thing to look up. In terms of, say, office space, we have a beautiful rental agreement with another nonprofit that is less than $2,000 a year, including our internet. That's what we've done for our office space. We're very lean.
Where are you guys located at again?
We've got office space up in the Life Empowered building, so we're up in Uptown, so 18th and Columbia Boulevard. So we don't have a too visible a presence, and honestly, we're using it mostly for committee meetings. They've got a great conference room that we use, and we've got a little office kind of tucked back in there. But at the point we've got active staff again, it's a great anchor point for us to be in Uptown as well as kind of down here.
I appreciate you going through how the grant process works because I'm still learning what Main Street is. And, a lot of the comments that are made, it gives the appearance, right, that there's a
Right.
proprietary, like
Right.
just happens here, is decided here, when actuality there's some that are put forward, there's an initial, but it's actually ultimately decided by a completely different governing body with Oregon Main Street. And I think that's an important fact to bring up.
Well, and we have tried to be very transparent and fair in the process. The reason why we've gotten so good at winning grants is because we pay attention to what the criteria are. And we try to pick the best project locally based on how we know that will perform in terms of the criteria Oregon Main Street's looking at. But we try to do that with a lot of respect for the property owners that are submitting their projects for the grant. I think the other thing to really note is at no point does St. Helens Main Street get $200,000 from Oregon Main Street, and it's not just sitting in our bank account. The way that it's a reimbursement grant. So for instance,
Spend it.
Right.
they spend it,
They keep their
they
receipts.
spend the money, they
Submit
keep
their
their receipts, they submit it to us, we review it, make sure it's in the scope of what the grant was awarded for. Do all the calculations, send a report back to Oregon Main Street, they send us a check, then we cut a check to the property owner. And so we do that in tranches usually, but at no point are we sitting around with a pot of money that we're dangling in front of someone.
I have like one more question kind of, and then a comment. One is that, I know we were up against a really, really, really tight deadline for Klondike. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I would love to hear more about in the future is when a grant is, hopefully we get a lot more grants, right?
Right.
That what we can do as council or as a
Right.
city to support those efforts. So
Yeah.
the business owner,
permits and
yeah,
stuff,
is so the business owner is not up into that.
Well, I
don't
think,
like that.
yeah, I think some of it was a perfect storm.
Yeah. There's always room for improvement
Right.
everywhere. And I think that after each one
Absolutely.
of these grant issuance, and then when the completion happens, there should just be like a construction project, the lessons learned, how we can, the opportunities to improve. It doesn't mean that it has to be bad or negative. It's what could we do to make it better, less stressful,
100%.
more streamlined? And I think that that would be beneficial to do in the future. And then my just remaining comment is, I just want to commend you on what you appear so professional all the time. Feels like you generally are a target a lot of times. You stay out of the drama. And I think you have a genuine interest on the economic vitality of the city and partnering with whomever comes down the pipeline. And I can say that watching you work over the last couple of years, I think it's really, I admire that and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's the kind of feedback that will continue to fuel the fire, I think. By no means do I do this alone, and I do have board members present.
Thank you, Board.
Marcy Sanders, Mary Hubbard, Jen Doherty. There's no way, I may be standing up here, but there's no way I could do this without the team that I've got. And I'm very proud of how hard we work and how we keep trying to fit it in with the rest of our lives and our businesses. So thank you for the opportunity to volunteer. Any other questions?
Kind of, but
Okay.
I don't want, are we up on other time?
Yeah.
I was just curious about if you could talk about the vacant storefront thing. I know Astoria at one point was kind of the poster child for
Right.
Worcester City for getting that.
Right.
going. What have you guys learned about that?
Well, I mean, we have, Marcy and I have come to a couple of planning meetings and I think it was about a year ago that we came. Astoria's got, like I believe we do, some tools available. But I think a lot of it is about carrots and sticks, right? You do have to hold folks accountable, but having a relationship where you can start to figure out what is it gonna take to make this not be vacant? What is it gonna take? And sometimes that's money and sometimes that's vision and sometimes that's education and sometimes it's fines.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, nobody wants to hear that, but that is actually, one of the takeaways from our full day in Astoria about how did they fill it in? Sometimes the city or another partner like a Main Street needs to help property owners find a new way to look at whatever their property is, right? And it's hard, but yeah, sometimes you can't have it all happen at once. And I think for any of us that visit Astoria is to remember that's a 30-year process. It's not something that just they started 5 or 10 years ago.
We got a presentation a while back, but I think it was from CET with all the vacant storefronts. And I was kind of really surprised at how many that were actually counted. There was a lot more than I would have thought.
Yeah.
So.
Well, if you start talking, I mean, this is one thing about, say, the Holton Hollow, the Hubbard property across from Red Apple. That's a property that now has not just housing, but also a commercial piece and is now on the rolls for having tax revenue for the city. That was a vacant piece of property the entire time we've been a city. So it can be done, but one lot at a time, I guess.
How many businesses are in your membership and how does your member?
We don't have a membership. That's the beautiful thing.
Okay, so anyone can just attend.
Anyone can attend meetings.
On Main Street.
Well, do they want to volunteer? Do they like St. Helens? Do they want to contribute?
Well, there's lots of local.
There's like,
businesses, so
yeah,
I'm curious
sure.
about that.
No, absolutely.
Like how the chamber
I
works,
think-
you're a
exactly.
member and you, okay.
But we don't have that structure. We're not a membership organization, but one of the tools we're probably going to roll out here is for a way for folks to sponsor and support. How to be a supporter of Main Street financially. That would be great. So.
As a past recipient, it was a pleasure dealing with you. And it wasn't easy because we tried, I think, twice before, maybe 3 times before.
Yeah.
We saw there was an opportunity to get it. So we thought, we've got this project, well, let's put it in there. And
Yeah.
we didn't get it. And so my wife and I thought, well, okay, let's try one more time. And so we pulled the trigger on the project, and even before we'd put it in, but we didn't know we were gonna get it. And we did get it, and then we decided, okay, now we can put some stone on, and it's huge expense on that.
Yeah.
So it did change the project because we wouldn't have got what you see today
Right.
because of your help. And I was leery of, I've never gotten any money from anything but the bank and myself. So it was a little strange, like, oh, I'm gonna get some money. That's
Yeah.
it must be government. And it was not. It was working with you. And you had a clear.
Documented reporting it. Yep.
Clear objective.
Yep.
And it was, seamless as it can be, but you do the work that you say you're gonna do, and pull it off. And you did take the stretch on this one, on my project, because it was a new project that normally they don't do, or you try and take care of the storefronts that are there.
Yeah.
And so.
Yes, it usually is about historic revitalization. We like that. We won 2 grants that year, and I will say we're the only We are one of only 3 cities that have ever won 2 grants in one grant cycle. So I'm very proud that we did that. We had 2 really solid projects that year. So
Are you allowed to tell us who's in the running?
I'd rather not right now.
Surprise.
Let's
ask.
No, I'm trying not to jinx it. But
Thank you. Thank you
there's
for
a lot of competition this year, so we feel like we've been very lucky so far.
Yeah. Good luck. We'll keep our fingers crossed. All right, we will move into item number 4, review proposed seasonal library intern job description. I didn't have anything to comment on it. It was pretty self-explanatory and exciting. Yes.
Oh, I'll add a couple things. It's fully funded by grant money from the State Library of Oregon, actually from the federal government through the state library. It's a one-time opportunity. We're hoping to hire a 15 to 17-year-old. This will fund about 130 hours of their time, and then the grant also has some money for supplies. And three things that we're going to focus on. One is required by the grant, which is called a connected learning project. So we're going to engage with that kiddo. What is that they're particularly interested in around libraries, around working in the summer? We'll use that. And the other things in the mix are Teen Advisory Council, which is fairly common in public libraries, and will be an opportunity for us to engage not only with those kiddos, but get their help engaging with their peers. I was going to tell you, our youngest new library assistant, Karina, is I think 21, and her advice for us is don't make eye contact when you're near the teens. So we're going to take advantage of this person to help us get that Teen Advisory Council together. And then finally, they'll be able to help us with Summer Library Challenge work. We've got lots of programs, as you know, and lots of projects. So we'll keep them busy. We're really excited about the opportunity.
And nice job getting that grant too. Awesome.
Very exciting.
Anybody have anything else? All right, that is exciting. All right. Next on the agenda is number 5, review proposed updated governing policy and city code revisions. City Attorney Ashley Wygod.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Ashley Wygod, reporting from the City Attorney's Office. So we have been having several discussions about the governing policy, first on March 17th, 2025, where we had a work session, and then on May 7th, we had another work session, as you know. So if we have made some revisions to the governing policy, and can you put the document, the governing policy document. There you go. Thank you, Kathy. So after the last work session, there were some proposed revisions, and I just want to go over those and see if anybody has any questions. So for section 2, there was a proposed revision. This statement is too narrow for this section. This section about the governing structure is just city council responsibilities. And we just discussed that this is generally a statement that's restricting. It's really intended to be applying to city council meetings. So propose to remove that section. Section 3, also we're proposing to remove that section because this concept about a collaborative decision-making policy with council liaisons is really something that fits better with the format that we are moving away from, which is having city council more involved in supervision and certain operational decisions. So after the discussion at the last meeting, we talked about removing this section. We moved to section 3. The proposed revisions here, they seem to just be more clarification.
I do have something in this one. Do you want us to ask when we're going through it, or do you want us to wait till we're done?
That would be great. Yeah.
Fine.
Here, please ask your questions now.
Okay, so the question I have on this one is in accordance with the city's hiring policy, and I did some research. We actually don't have hiring policies. The only thing we have is in the personnel procedures. We only have one topic, which is appointments. We don't have an actual standalone, and we don't have anything hiring policies.
Okay. Can you scroll down a little bit, Kathy? I think up a little bit. There you go.
And I was referring to the bottom of page 46, where that 3 was.
Yep. So now scroll up a little bit, please. Thanks.
Right there.
So I would say that the city can now develop some hiring policies.
Perfect. I
So
was gonna
that-
put that in a parking lot. I was just gonna
Perfect.
bring it up, that might be a good thing, but we are putting it in here and we don't currently have any.
Okay, good.
You
Um,
know,
very good. So the city council can direct the city administrator to develop hiring policies in its personnel manual. Scrolling down, please, Kathy, thank you. We go down to section, keep going down. The section A that's crossed out, it was just duplicative of the section above it, which talks about hiring and firing of department heads.
question, any applicable above that, any applicable employment contract, are we gonna be adding that as part of our, how are we determining which department heads, like, because it's ambiguous as a way as it sits now, so is that going to be now part of when we develop the hiring policy? What, we're gonna define it in that?
Yes, that's where it could be defined and discussed, and it's my understanding now that there are not any employment contracts with department heads, but that's something that city council can consider and get information about if it wants to enter into employment contracts in the future. Scrolling down, and then section 4, these changes, right, these changes were related to personnel evaluations. If you recall, at the last work session, we were discussing what the best way is to implement these personnel evaluations. We talked about maybe a city council liaison would be involved, but really where you landed was it would make sense for the city recorder to be involved with managing that process, and that city council can direct what type of performance evaluation that it wants to put in place. And that the city recorder can manage that, and either through internal employee that's a HR professional that is an employee of the city, or outside HR professional that the city hires would help and work with the city recorder to manage that process. And that's the same, those changes were mirrored in B for performance reviews of department heads.
The only question I had about this is if it's consistent between the two, because in the first one in A, it talks about the council will provide guidance to the city recorder about the scope and methods of the performance evaluation. And then B, it says the city administrator will provide guidance to the scope and methods of performance. So my question is there going to be continuity and consistency between the two, or is the city administrator going to develop his or her own, in this case, his methods for the performance evaluation?
So in this case, because the city administrator is supervising the department heads, it would be the city administrator's discretion, but city council can always direct the city administrator if it wants him to use a certain form of performance evaluation. You can do so.
Yeah, my whole thing was on just when we go back to it, the continuity and the consistency, right? Because when we start doing things different, that's problematic and leaves us, at risk. So if we're consistent on how those are done, seems that that's more advantageous for the city.
Yeah, and I think that it just flows from who is responsible for the performance evaluation. In this case, since the city administrator is responsible for those performance evaluations, he would manage that process with input from city council as needed. There was one issue that was raised with the performance evaluations. In the last meeting, city council had requested, or some of the councilors had asked if they could receive a copy of those performance evaluations. And when I talked to a few, when I reviewed this issue, receiving a copy of performance evaluations of employees is generally something that direct supervisors have access to. And therefore, it's not recommended that the city administrator or city recorder provide copies of those personnel, of those performance evaluations to city council. Because those are things like, did this employee meet or exceed or not meet certain expectations? But it's something that's distinct from how the city operates. So for example, was the project performed in a timely manner and on budget? Those are issues that aren't necessarily in a performance evaluation. Those are things that could be shared with city council, and city council could request that information of departments. And those are separate from a performance evaluation. And so really in reviewing whether or not it's recommended for city council to have access to people's personnel evaluations, I found that it's not something that is recommended. It could be something that if in the future, if you were looking at, it could be something that in the future you consider, if you're finding you're not getting the information met, but in general, performance evaluation is something that supervisors have access to, and otherwise they're confidential.
We were talking just in referring to department heads specifically.
Right. Just department heads. There was a comment made at the last work session of whether or not city council would have access to confidential personnel annual evaluations.
Yeah, I recall that because it was at first that it seemed like a consensus that we wanted to keep a liaison there to participate, and then we backed off of that. And then it was trying to find alternative ways to still be engaged, but also removing ourselves from any type of employment practices. And so we were then removing ourselves from any type of actual participation in the evaluations.
Right.
So,
And what I found is that you can have it one way or other. You're either involved in supervising the employees and you would have then access to their annual performance evaluations, or you're not involved.
Where are we going with this? Are
I
we
was
gonna
gonna say, I'm
be
confused.
involved?
Department heads, what is,
Frankly, I don't think we should be involved with any of that.
I don't think we should be involved with regular staff, but department heads, is that where we're at?
That's what we're talking about, sorry.
Department heads and looking at their evaluations.
Yes. So
You're saying that we should not do that.
yes, I'm recommending that city council should not receive copies of department heads' personnel evaluations. Those are confidential, and that's separate from whether or not the department is properly performing their job, whether or not their projects are on budget, whether or not they're responding to records requests in a timely manner. Those are general business affair, how the city is performing as a city, separate from a personnel evaluation.
can I ask you a question, and maybe this is just more of a thought-provoking one, but if part of our evaluation of a city administrator is actually performing the evaluations of the department heads, how in fact are we even going to be able to use that as any type of information part of it? Can you think about maybe how we would do that?
You can do that. A thought that comes to mind is you could say, as a monthly report, a city administrator could say, I performed this many performance department heads this month. And he could even give a summary, or even over the whole year, I performed this number of performance evaluations, this many met expectations, these did not meet expectations, and to provide a general summary, but not necessarily getting into the confidential nature of how the employee is performing.
And if we're already participating a bit and setting the criterion for an evaluation and we have a part of that, then, I mean, we should have continuity on what's being sent out there for the evaluations. So if they're done, then they're done based on that criteria.
Yes.
And I did notice on your I think it was page 44, you did have that this recommendation was not included in this final draft as it's under review to determine if the practice is consistent with employment laws. Are we going to be waiting for you to complete some type of review, or is this the completion of your review right now based on that?
This is the completion of
Just
it.
making sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So that is those are the end of the discussions, the revisions for the governing policy. Does anyone else have any questions about the governing policy? The proposed revisions for the governing policy are on the agenda this evening, but the city code revisions are not. And so we're gonna, we can talk about those at the next session. That's my recommendation, so before there.
I didn't have anything that was different. I don't know if anybody else reviewed them. I thought that it encapsulated everything that we discussed.
Does anybody have did anybody have a chance to take a look at these? Have any questions? And again, just for background, these are proposed code revisions delegating authority for the city administrator and what his responsibilities and duties are. And they're generally things that he's already doing. They're just codified now in the city code. So hearing, I don't hear any proposed changes to the governing policy. You're gonna see that this evening in the city council meeting for adoption.
Only last comment I have is that there is that thing again with the hiring policies, and if we adopt it, then we're adopting it, and then we don't have the documentation or the process to follow when we adopt it. So that's my concern. We're pointing to something that doesn't exist in this policy. So I have trepidation about that.
Just push it out to the next meeting. Would that be?
It's gonna take us a while to do a hiring policy.
It's my recommendation that you should adopt this policy, and there are the city has been hiring people and it is following a policy. You might not have a written policy on how you're hiring people. It might not be as consistent as you would like, but city has been hiring people. And so I think that it would be my recommendation to adopt the governing policy and then direct the city administrator to develop those hiring policies and have them put in writing.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I mean, there is still a lot of work to be done. We need to look into HR work getting done and how we're gonna move through HR issues that we're having internally. So there's still a lot to be done, but I think this is a step in the right direction. So I'm comfortable with moving forward. We can get the rest of our ducks in a row. Sure.
So that the informal policy has been to attract the best and the brightest. And wherever they present, if there is someone internally, the internal candidate can move up and be efficient, or if we need to take a more global look and, go out the local advertising and national advertising, whatever it takes to bring that person to join our team.
Yeah, I mean, I penciled out like hiring policies versus personnel policies and things that we're gonna, we should, it appears in my opinion, be looking at like job postings, advertising procedures, application screening processes, interview guidelines. All of those have things. And then we have our personnel policies. So I don't know, it just makes me a bit uncomfortable. Like, to me, it's like making a regulation or adopting something and I'm pointing to something that doesn't exist. And what does that do if we do hire and something comes up and it's not right?
I think you're raising a really good example is that state statutes are adopted. And then there's a rulemaking process to adopt those rules to implement the statutes. And you could maybe look at it like that. Like this is an overarching governing policy. And then you're going to work on the underlying employment policies that support this. And you just have to move one step at a time.
Let's just put that on the next agenda.
I think that's a great idea. I don't want to put it in a parking lot and I don't want to kick it down the road.
On the
We
next
get
agenda,
on it
let's
and
just
get
keep
it
on
done.
track with getting
like
our
it.
HR stuff
like that.
in line.
Yeah.
What's going on the next agenda?
As hiring policies.
Discussing and hiring.
Gonna develop them or what do you?
I mean, you want me to? I will.
You and ask you what you're already using, and then we'll start working on it from what you already have.
Okay, so I should
I
come
asked
up with
this-
a memo.
Yeah, what you've been doing, and then we'll put that on the next agenda. We'll talk about it together, see what John's input is and get attorney's feedback and try to get something on the books.
I actually did contact other cities, see if they had it, because I was going by that executive session law. And none of them had anything.
Look at that. We're gonna create the wheel.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that on the next agenda item, any decisions are made.
No,
We're
we're
just
just
wanting to
looking
make an agenda item to
Yes.
have it continue the discussion.
Forward on the progress of these administrative functions that should be in place. Yes, okay, I like it. Like it's not, Counselor Hubbard, do you have anything?
I agree with you.
Okay. Counselor Pennington, you have anything on that? Counselor Sundin, okay. You're good? All right, all right, we're good. We're trucking along. We are on the police station site deliberations. And before we go, I'm going to declare a potential conflict of interest because my husband is a police officer of the city of St. Helens. With that, I would also like to add that I've had multiple conversations with Stephen Myers, the executive director of the Oregon Ethics Board, and Daniel Pacheco, plus my private attorney of almost 30 years of an appellate, administrative, and governmental lawyer. And this is not one that any of those individuals have ever said that I need to do a conflict, but I have chosen to repeatedly declare a potential conflict of interest on just out of abundant care of caution for myself and the city. But I wanted to make perfectly clear of that for today. John, you want to take it away?
So our police station needs a place to be built. I think we all know that. And it's moved around from place to place. We have a design that works on several different properties. We've considered other options of remodeling the existing facility, of co-locating next to the sheriff's office, of all the work that we've done pointed to 1771 Columbia Boulevard being the top choice, and that happened through the initial process back when we first started this in 2122. Dozens of meetings, public meetings for input on that. Most recently, we did a scoring exercise comparing 7171 to the Gable Road property, which is out next to the school outfield there. There was some challenges with that site, both in the drainage and also the public acceptance of it seemed. So we did a cost justification analysis comparing all these different sites, and it still comes back to 1771, and mostly because it's timely, and every other path takes more time to keep working on this, and inflation costs continue to go up. To pick a site and get moving on it. And at the budget committee meeting last week, there was a comment about could we build the station, existing funds we have available for that. And so I met with the contractor, the architects, the project manager, and the whole team that's been working through this, and they feel confident that we likely could. There would be some deferrals. We have to scale down some of the minor attributes of the project, but you could get the same building, same layout. A little less landscaping, a little less frontage improvements might need to be waived to things like a generator, which is almost $300,000, might have to forego, including the property purchase. The 1771, how it's set up with a lease and option would give us several years to get this built and then execute on the sale down the road a few years.
You're saying we have the money to build the station?
We want to fine tune that over the next couple of weeks, but we feel we can get it's really close.
Just say we would cut a backup generator for a police station. Doesn't sound very smart.
Well, it's
I'm sorry, I just have to-
$300,000 item that we
I
could.
know, but
defer.
it needs a backup
It'd be
generator.
ordered for it. It just
Or what, that report, like any type of report, a computer?
they would be fully functional. Yes.
It's up to me.
KVA ones.
I'm just borrow yours.
You can borrow mine.
Or wire per trailer.
Yeah,
You could do that too. So,
okay.
I'm sure there's some solutions, but the design team wanted a little time to work on it. Yeah. There's no reason the council could move forward with the purchase and sale agreement, which has a 90-day due diligence period in it that's been reviewed and approved by the seller and our attorneys.
John, at what point does arbitrage fees and penalties stop? Is it when we actually break ground? Is it what is the catalyst to it?
Supposed to spend the money on the project. I don't know the exact time of it, and but we could begin spending money fairly.
Would like to know that. I mean, not for today, but I'd like to know when that clock is gonna stop for us just throwing.
And arbitrage is just eating at the principal.
Right,
balance,
it's ridiculous. It's really disheartening. So
So if you'd like a detailed report, we can get you that. The design team wanted some time, the contractor's working on it. It can do that. At the same time, we could also be under contract and be working through some of these diligence items on site to get in there and know what we're dealing with, so.
Were you asking us to move up? Decisions
I
tonight?
want to move it up to
Yeah,
bid
so
tender.
do I.
I don't want to be part of kicking this can down the road for another 5 years and losing another $750,000 on this. It's ridiculous. So.
So now the term of the $42 on the water bill is for the police station.
So it was the potential 30, it would have had to been a 30 cent, right? It would have been the 30 cent increase, John,
The current fee is $10 a month, and then we're looking at
a 30 cent.
30 cent more just to cover the,
However, can I ask a question? Because just to read it, the last time I asked you, I believe you gave me this answer, but double checking. The intention would be the current police station, where it sits right now, would be to sell that and put that towards the actual building, not put it towards the waterfront, not put it to anything else. It would go to paying down that debt for the police station.
that has been discussed in previous council meetings, and it's the council's prerogative what they want to do with those
Okay.
proceeds. Yeah.
Did we talk to Wayne about 1031 with that parcel?
We did, yes.
Okay, he wasn't in for that. Yeah, that's what I thought. So the police station will cost the public 30 more cents. That's it?
It should be, yeah. That should be it.
They said 30 cents based on having to buy this new property and
You were at the budget committee.
I listened.
The name of it now was the public safety fee and then the dollar amount for that.
Hasn't it always been the public safety fee on the utility bill?
Yeah, the budget committee proposed
The name changed.
the public safety facility for the facility
Yeah.
of the building, and then also an operations component. um, we're Working really hard behind the scenes to make that as small of
I mean, it would,
nothing. So
it would be, if we sold the other property, theoretically, we wouldn't need to have that 30 cents though, correct? We're not gonna sell for very much, but.
well, we need to use it until it's ready to build. Yeah. I wouldn't recommend selling it until we're moved into.
Yeah,
the
you
new-
think?
Yeah.
You have went over this obviously with the police department. You guys have talked about the cuts that would be made in the design.
This all just happened in real time, yeah.
I would feel
But the
comfortable.
building itself is the same. It's just the appurtenances.
Okay.
So the only cuts that were made were, say them again.
Cosmetic.
Yeah, mostly cosmetic, street frontage. Lot things, the emergency backup generator might be different. And we're also deferring the sale too, so there's still a purchase price is gonna have to address at some point.
But the structure, the facility, it will be there. We can add to the additional cosmetic enhancements later. I'll go plant some plants.
There was, I mean, for instance, the landscape budget was 100,000, which
They're the Friends of the Police.
Yeah, exactly.
For probably a
It's
solid.
Main Street property. It is, it's in your Main Street corridor. Just saying. You might have a partner there.
Sounds like we might need some beautification.
Yes. We need some good landscapers.
Art and Design Committee.
Love that. Look at this collaboration. It's great. Okay.
What do you think?
My big concern was being able to afford it, so if we can make it fit with what we have, then I think let's do it.
I'd like to propose some value engineering, which engineers and architects really don't know how to do because their dollars aren't into it. So
we've actually done a few iterations of value engineering to look at the smaller windows of different brick cores, different finish materials. And we've already knocked quite a bit down on it, and
let me look at it.
yeah, and we'll have a few weeks here to look at that. I mean, whether you decide to move forward the purchase and sale agreement or not, they're gonna work on that.
Yeah, we got 90 days too for, sounds like a plan.
Save you money.
Okay. And then that, anything else? Counselor Gunderson, did you have anything else?
No, just one clarification.
Okay, so we're on to number 7, report from city administrator.
Back on track.
What?
We're back on track.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This week, Mohammed failed to mention it was Public Works Week this week, and there was a social media campaign. If you haven't seen it, it's a nice little video clip, about a minute long, and it kind of concludes with Dave Elders as a memorial in that, which thank you, council, for your support and allowing staff to attend his service Monday. It was very well attended and appreciated, and it's, his family appreciated it. I think his work family appreciated it. That was really very nice. I'm happy to see this morning or last night, the jail levy renewed. This will save a lot of time for our officers running around with not have to go to faraway places to pick up and deliver people. And it also, our municipal courts will be a lot more functional having the jail. See that. Mohammed mentioned the Riverwalk project is wrapping up. The streets utilities are close behind, and mentioned the street closures. You know, that's unfortunately the contractor's targeting June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, which is right before the first 13 nights, and we hope to have that work done at exiting property out through the back there at Old Portland there. So we're headed into our event seasons marathon here with 13 nights kicking off June 5th. Then every Thursday thereafter, then the 21st, we have the Kiwanis Parade. And the next weekend we have later that week, we have the ribbon cutting ceremony down here. And then the 28th, there's Community Day in the park. And the next weekend is 4th of July. So be very busy. Sandcastle Festival is still looking to be a go. Working through some of the details. On the numerous big projects we're working on, PG substation. That project, we've been meeting regularly with PGE, with Oregon Business Development Department. And you're gonna see 3 agreements with that. One's between the city and Business Oregon, one's between city and PGE, and that'll be a subsequent agreement once the substation parcels created between PG and city. So for that transaction of that land, but there's a lot of variables. It's some pre-design work. As soon as we execute, there's some funds that will drop to the city to do this feasibility study. Find some of that work up as far as MPG provided a list of what needs to be done. Geotech survey, environmental analysis, and a host of other things. So we're spending a lot of time on that. And I've also been pretty consumed with Project Arcadia and making that progress, you know, pushing that through. They've been working with DEQ through their air quality, getting their boiler permits up and going, through the environmental issues. It's good. We're just taking a while to get done here. The development interest we've had in the waterfront. I just lost my space. That developer would like to come and meet the whole council and give a presentation. And we had targeted the next meeting, June 4th, but they'd like to do the June 18th. They've proposed some agreements. We're reviewing them, and council have a chance to look at that.
Any movement on that second developer? Or the one that killed?
No, they just. I'd hope to have the senior lease renewal for you for this for approval today. There was some updating that we hadn't been updated in a long time, like many years. So we at their next board meeting, we presented our edits, are very friendly amendments, adding clarification language. But they're reviewing it. I'm probably going to go to their next meeting, and then we'll probably hope to have it for the next meeting.
And that's just for the makerspace area, correct?
No, that's a senior center. And the
Oh,
same,
okay.
the same, like almost
Yeah.
identical thing as with,
Right.
with the Columbia Learning Center where we had some pushback on the initial edits and trading drafts. But just wasn't quite ready for tonight. So. Bargaining dates with both of our labor units, AFSCME and the Police Association. This is an extraordinarily challenging year, but I remind myself of we've been through worse. I mean, in 2008, coming out of 2008, we lost I think 25% of staff overall, 30% in the general fund. It was really, really rough. And I don't know if there's any solace in that, but this is an equal challenge of trying to get work done, fund positions, find public safety, all of it. So find a solution, I'm sure. So. Down at the docks, there's also the dock construction going on, right? You'll see that starting next week down there. So see cranes and things out in the water. That's what they're working on. That's it.
One more thing.
One more thing. Yeah, it's a city county quarterly dinner. St. Helens turned to host the city county dinner, and where would you like to have it? And is there a date that works? Next quarter.
I don't know.
May, June.
I mean, it sounds like we're so bowed up. June, maybe a little bit of breathing room.
The date, as far as the date goes, I can't get that narrowed down because it's gonna be on a Tuesday. So I just have to figure out where on the calendar that we typically have those. I think it's the third Tuesday, but
June 16th. June 17th.
Those are the Elks again.
Elks is a good venue.
I mean, the rec center is where we usually, the center.
the Elks would require a lot less work on staff.
But how much is the cost? As we're talking about budget,
It's about $100.
rent it. And then food costs.
Well, it gets passed on to the people who attend. So it's probably gonna be in the $25 to $30 range.
Per person.
Whatever is the most simple and less expensive.
I think the Elks is probably that's as good.
All right.
There was one other thing. I had been speaking with Treadway about a contract with WANA, and they did let me know that they received it from John and their attorneys are looking at it. And it will be finalized tomorrow, and then the council needs to approve it. And WANA is wanting that back as soon as possible. Since they start June 6th, and I realize we don't have another council meeting in between that. So we may need to have a special session, or how does that work? to approve
You
that?
could authorize me to sign it, and then you could ratify it at your next meeting. So. And it's things that are very timely, we often do that. That I know it's not controversial.
It's pretty timely. You just want to be respectful.
So council like to do that.
And do we get to see the contract at all before you sign it? Sure. Like. Maybe at least-
Send it out. Or Ashley can.
Yeah, so you would, at this upcoming meeting this evening, you could delegate authority for the city administrator to sign the contract. And then for you to ratify it. I've reviewed it and so I can send it to you, and if you have any objections, then John, hold off on signing.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect.
You mentioned the sandcastle competition. Are we gonna do something with the boat?
We're still
Do we
working.
need that?
There's two paths, using the boat or getting it licensed, and the other one is to rent boats. They've done in the past. So rent both paths.
All right.
Tell to rent the boat, other than put insurance on it and hire a crew. Doesn't have to be inspected again.
It does.
Does it?
Yeah.
By the Coast Guard. That's on the contractor though, right? Or is that on the city?
It's not the city's salary though, so it's on us. They would be the operator.
Indemnify us and all that good stuff. though.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, anything else? All right, so following this general work session, we're gonna be going into an executive session. And it's gonna be under real property transactions under ORS 1926602E, exempt records, confidential attorney client privilege memo under ORS 1926662F, and consult with counsel potential litigation under ORS 1966602H. Represented as the new media, staff and other persons are approved and shall be allowed to attend the executive sessions. All other members of the audience are last to leave the council chambers. With that, this meeting adjourned.